Welcome to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSUN Community Radio. NAMI is a national alliance on mental illness. We are the largest grassroots advocacy network for people with mental illness and their family members, with over 800 national affiliates and 15 Kansas affiliates, with NAMI Wichita being one of those 15. We provide awareness, support, education, and advocacy for people affected by mental illness. Our purpose here is to provide a community conversation on KSUN Radio that gives insight into what it's like to live with mental illness. Our intention and our hope is that our program will change attitudes, assumptions, and stereotypes about people with mental health conditions. My name is David Larson. I am very pleased and proud to be your host today, and I am a person living with mental illness. I am in recovery for major depressive disorder. Like everyone, I struggle with the ups and downs of emotions and the challenges of being fully human, but I am doing great, and I know I have many gifts to offer my family, my friends, and my community. And before I go on, I want to say a special thank you to our technical department and our executive department. So, executive producer David Peterson, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
You bet. And Mike Padilla, our technical department, thank you.
The Department of One.
Exactly.
It's the Department of Juan.
There you go. Well, with that, I'm now going to turn our attention to our wonderful guest today. Hello, Treva.
Hello, David.
How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. Well, so Treva, let me start the questions by asking you, where were you born and where did you grow up?
I am a Kansan.
Yay!
I was born in Hutchinson, Kansas, and grew up on a farm near Hutchinson.
Okay. All right. And where did you go to school at?
Well, my grade school was a one-room school called Kent, K-E-N-T, and then I went to Haven High School and graduated from there.
Okay. And do you remember what your mascot was for Haven High School?
We had to tell her earlier.
They were the Wildcats.
All right.
The Wildcats. Okay.
So did you go through the all 8 years at your one-room schoolhouse?
I did.
I went through 4, so I can appreciate that.
That is
It
awesome.
closed after I graduated from 8th grade.
Wow.
Wow, that is amazing. My dad told me stories about going through a one-room schoolhouse and everything. So, and his teacher almost set fire to it.
But that's another story, right?
That is another story. I will have to share that with you sometime. So, well, let's see, what else? Is there anyone in your family that has a mental illness?
Yes, we have 3 children. Our youngest son has schizoaffective disorder.
Okay, and for our listeners, I know we've explained it before, but schizoaffective disorder is when you have a mood disorder, such as depression or bipolar, associated with schizophrenia.
Yes.
And so he has one, or he has both of those at the same time.
Right.
Right, okay. Well, so when did you first encounter the work of NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness?
Well, it's interesting. Our son, he was adopted at 9.5 months and was always a very unique individual. And then we began knowing there was some kind of issue. It's hard to find out what that is. But we became connected with Keys for Networking, which was a support group for parents who had children and adolescents with behavioral and mental health issues. And we were starting to age out of that, and so at that point, we became familiar with NAMI.
Okay, so how long have you been a member of NAMI? Because I know you've been with the NAMI Wichita group for quite some time.
Over 20 years, I'm sure.
Over 20 years. That is phenomenal. That is so wonderful. And that we've had leadership like you there. So that is great. And you have been quite the leader, I have to admit. And we're going to talk about some things that you are leading very much so this time. But I'll get back to that later on. Let's see, what else can I pose with you? What hobbies do you have?
Well, my first response is NAMI, but actually since I'm retired, that NAMI is my work, I guess. I love to travel,
Okay.
and we have traveled to all 50 states in the U.S.
What about travel overseas?
We have done some of that too, and we're headed to Paris soon. So
Really?
Fantastic.
Can I hide in your luggage
it's going to be full. No room.
with other people that are hiding in your luggage,
Yeah.
right? Okay. That makes sense.
Well, and can I divulge that you also, I'm going to divulge, I say can you, and you're also going to be taking a tour to Ireland.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We're
so-
visiting our daughter and her husband in Paris, and then we'll finish our traveling in Ireland. Yes.
That is phenomenal. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, I'm rather jealous of you, I have to admit.
right.
Very jealous. So, well, this is Our Own Voice on Kaysen Community Radio. We are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back. Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and Kaysen Community Radio. NAMI is a national alliance on mental illness. Our Own Voice is intended to humanize a misunderstood, highly stigmatized topic of mental illness by showing that it's possible and common to live with a mental health condition. So, Treva, in talking about a stigmatized topic like mental health and mental illness, let's talk about stigma for a moment, okay? What kind of stigma has your son experienced? What kind of stigma have you experienced?
I think one of the things is when people say, "And how are you today? How are you doing?" They really don't want to know, because if I would start talking about living with my son who has mental illness and the ups and downs we experience and so on, their eyes just sort of glaze over and they start to back up, and they don't know how to respond because people just don't understand, and there is so much misunderstanding. So that's one thing. And our son, it's very interesting when you have people living with mental illness. He does not like to go to a barbershop, let's say, and get his hair cut, because to make conversation, they usually say, "And what are you doing?" And if you don't have a job, or if you're not in school, who are you?
Exactly.
And so people who are not able to be involved in those kinds of things, really, that does a dent in their self-esteem for sure.
Yeah, their self-esteem and self-worth.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how has that affected you, as in watching him go through this?
Well, I think that family members, particularly parents of persons who have mental illness, adult persons, do experience some loss and grief because your family member maybe is not what you would have expected to be able to do, or maybe they were on the way and were in college, which is not my son, but I know many people where that has happened, and then the illness interferes with their completing that, and expectations just need to be changed, and goals need to be adjusted, and people can live in recovery, but there is that sense of loss and grief, and when you see your family member struggling, that's a hard thing.
Yeah, and to note about recovery is not an endpoint. It's a
Right.
process.
Exactly.
A lot of people forget that, or they expect an endpoint when it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And recovery means different things for different people.
That's very true.
Depending on the seriousness of their illness at that particular time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. It's not just a straight line from beginning to end, but it's a work in process.
Yeah. What work have you done and do you do in NAMI Wichita in particular?
Well, I think NAMI's strengths are, first of all, in support and our support groups. So I've been involved with those. And then the education piece of helping family members learn more about mental illness, the symptoms, the treatments, and then we do some activities to help us with our communication skills and problem solving, and also how to take care of ourselves when we're living on the roller coaster that it is when we have a family member with mental illness. And so teaching the family-to-family class is something I've been involved with for many years, since 2004.
Oh, wow. That's phenomenal.
And then trying to reach out, I think, to other populations in the city, particularly minority groups.
Yeah, because they don't know what is happening necessarily in their family, in their communities concerning mental health, do they?
Right. Too often that's true. How to access services, where to go. And that's true for most people, I believe.
That's true.
Because I'm sure our family wouldn't know much about mental illness if we had not been impacted by our son who has it.
Right. Okay. Well, you're also on, if I can tweak your horn or whatever, you're also on the NAMI Faith Outreach Committee that we have here in NAMI Wichita.
Yes, along with you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
That's how I know about it.
Yes. And
So you were paying attention that day?
Yes, I was.
our goal is to hopefully reach out to faith communities and help with the education there to help persons understand what mental illness is, that there is hope, that there is recovery possibilities, but then know how to help their fellow members of their faith communities, how to support them. It's often said that mental illness is the only major mental illness where you do not receive a casserole because you have a sick family member.
That's right. Well, this is Our Own Voice on Kaysen Community Radio. We are talking with Treva about mental illness, and we're going to take a quick break and be right back.
If you would like to learn more about the National Alliance on Mental Illness and how you can get involved in mental health advocacy, please visit our website at nami.org.
Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and Kaysen Community Radio. NAMI is the National Alliance on Mental Illness. So, Treva, during the break we were talking about all sorts of things, but you pointed out a thought that I have on my sheet in front of me, and so I want to share that thought, and you can go ahead and answer it, okay? What about your story could help our listeners gain a deeper understanding of mental health conditions and the dispelling of stereotypes and misconceptions?
Well, I think that anytime we can share our story of living with someone who has mental illness, then that creates a trust level, and there are suddenly other people talking with you about their situations, and that would never happen if we don't talk about our own story. And so the story of my son is a long one because it started when he was very young. Some stories start when someone becomes ill in their late adolescent or early 20s, because that's a very common time when the brain is developing again, and so that's always a risk time. But I think the trust of our speaking out, and that's where it's very helpful to have celebrities and famous people also speaking out about mental illness, because then others are willing to disclose and talk about it as well. And that's the only way we're going to ever get rid of the stereotypes and the misconceptions. And one thing that NAMI is about is to let people know that you are never alone if you have someone in your family with mental illness, or if you yourself are living with mental illness. You are not alone.
Exactly. And now I'm going to sort of throw a curveball at you. All right. Something that NAMI does every year that you are highly involved with, and you are going to help explain to our listening audience about NAMI Walks. Tell us about NAMI Walks.
NAMI Walks is a national program, actually, and there are walks across the U.S. in many different communities. And in Kansas, we have the NAMI Kansas Walk, and we really have two goals with the walk. Number one is to talk to other people about NAMI, to help educate people about NAMI, know NAMI is there, and to try to educate people so that we can be busting the stigma that we talked about earlier, and also to raise money. For NAMI Wichita, that is our main fundraising activity for the year, and so it is important for us to have other people help us to support NAMI.
Exactly.
Because those funds then help with our local programming, our notebooks for all of the education classes that we offer, classes for persons living with mental illness, peer-to-peer, for their family members, family-to-family. NAMI Basics is a class for families and parents and caregivers of children and adolescents. And so this is what NAMI Walks is all about.
Yeah, and so people understand. David and I have said a time or two, at least, more than a time or two, that our programs are all free, and everyone is welcome to come to these programs without having to pay anything. And the way that we support those programs is through NAMI Walks, is through the money, the funds that are raised through NAMI Walks, through the donations, and those donations help with people being able to publish the manuals that we use.
Right. And the manuals are produced at the national level, so they are correct, and the information is updated annually, and so they are very, very important. Everyone who takes a NAMI education class ends up with a notebook that's filled with resource information that they can refer to at any time.
Yes,
And it's not just a 1 or 2 page notebook.
that's right. It's quite an extensive notebook. So, but that's their way of being able to get that information to you and be able to have you go back and refer to that and check it out and all that other stuff. So, well, David, I'm going to jump to you, and I'm going to ask you to give us a number before we cut to break.
I will give you that number, and I'm going to just take a little bit of time in the next segment because you guys have already covered almost everything.
Okay.
But our number is 316-686-1373, 316-686-1373.
Okay. Well, let's see. What else can I say other than this is Our Own Voice on KSUN Community Radio. We are talking with Treva, and we're going to take a quick break and be right back. Welcome back to Our Own Voice, a partnership in mental health awareness in cooperation with NAMI Wichita and KSUN Community Radio. NAMI is a national alliance on mental illness. Now, David, before the break, we had you give us a number that we always spout out, and I want you to give us that number again and tell us about what it goes to.
I will definitely do that. Before, though, the beautiful music that you have here as an intro and exit music is composed by our host, David Larson. And
Yes, David. And what was the name of that song?
It's called Spirit Dance.
Spirit Dance.
It
It's the
is.
theme. It's the Your Own Voice themes.
Yes.
Our Own Voice
Our
theme,
own
yes.
theme song. Yes.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It's and it was composed when I was last in the hospital, and it was composed as the start of my recovery.
Excellent.
So,
Was that the
Fantastic.
kind of music you were hearing in your head when you were
Yes.
going through? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's very calming and soothing music.
Thank you.
It's great.
But the number I gave before was 316-686-1373, or as David likes it, 316-686-1373. And what that number is as our NAMI number that you call, leave a message. We'll get back with you as soon as we can. Do not call that number if you have a crisis going on right now, or if you have if it's necessary, you might have to call 911. This is not for an emergency situation. But if you're interested in some of the programs that Treva and David have been talking about, I can give you more information about those, the support groups, the educational classes, and we have an Ask a Doctor hour, which is very well attended that you might be interested in coming to. So please call that number if you have some interest in knowing a little bit more about what David and Treva have been talking about.
Okay. Well, so Treva, let me throw this question at you. Help our listeners understand that every person with a mental health condition can hope for a brighter future. In other words, what words of hope can you share with us about those who are living with mental illness?
Well, we have a saying in NAMI: never give up hope. Science is on our side. As we have more research being done, we understand more about the brain. We are researching more medications that will really pinpoint the problem in the brain. And so we do have hope in that way. Another piece of hope is that the more that we as family members and as the person themselves living with mental illness understand their illness, obviously, the more we're going to understand how treatment can help. And we know that in a high percentage of the time, if people can access treatment and follow through, it works. And so that's the hope that we have. Sometimes it takes some patience, but we don't ever want to give up hope, because recovery is a word that we talk about now in
Yes.
with mental illness. So that's sort of what I would say for that part.
Okay. Also, I want to piggyback onto that and note that when you tell your story, and this is basically reiterating what you said previously, when you tell your story, your narrative, you are able to help bust stigma and dispel the misconceptions again.
Yes.
And so don't give up hope and bust stigma. Two actions all in the same way. So.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. Well, let me throw at you, who is your hero or heroine? Yeah, I know that's a stumper, isn't it?
It is. I haven't thought about that, I guess. I
know for me, my hero, one of my heroes actually is becoming Abe Lincoln, because he dealt with mental illness in his family and in his own life, and yet he rose above it. And it's phenomenal to see that people who have a mental health condition are rising above those things. And because of recovery or living through recovery, they are able to make a difference in life. And I guess he's one of my heroes. So, okay. What else
I would
can we
agree.
say?
He's very. I mean, what more we learn about President Lincoln, it's amazing.
Yeah. So,
I do want to add one thing that I know you guys caught on, but I want to emphasize it. NAMI is for everybody that has a mental illness, or if you're a family person like Treva that has someone in their family that has a mental illness. We try to support both sides.
that's right. Both the family members are supported, the peers or consumers or whatever you want to call me. I'm a person living with mental illness.
I'll call you David.
Okay, that's a good idea. That's the way to do it.
I'll try
And-
not to call you late for dinner.
That's right.
And we should add friends. Friends are
Yes.
very welcome to
Yes.
come to the support group and to the education classes as well.
Because it is
Exactly.
your support group.
Yes. So, thank you for joining us for Our Own Voice on KSUN Community Radio. Thank you to Treva for talking with us about mental illness, and join us for our next Our Own Voice program.